Everybody, welcome to Garden Time with Belle. Well, I am out here in front of my raised bed garden this morning because I need to work in here and I thought I'd bring you along today. And what I'm going to be doing today is lifting out some perennials that I want to overwinter. So this is a very good time for all of us, no matter what your zone is, no matter where you live in the country, to be thinking about when is your first average frost, if it happens to frost where you live. And in my zone 6 mid-Missouri garden, we definitely have frost. We have cold winters, and that's important to know. So if you don't know when your first average frost is, simply do a quick Google search, put in your zip code, and just ask that question of Professor Google. In my zone 6B mid-Missouri garden, my first average frost typically is around mid to late October. Here we are the first couple days of October, and so I could wait a few more weeks to pull some of these things out of my garden to overwinter them. However, I have a trip coming up. Actually, I'm going to be gone, leaving sometime next week. So I'm going to be out of town for quite a while. And, you know, gardeners, we think if we're not going to be home, what needs to be happening when we're not there? And so you have to kind of bump up your schedule a little bit. So before I take you along with me into my raised bed garden and show you which plants I'm going to be lifting and repotting and storing over winter, I'm going to invite everybody to please like and subscribe to my channel. If you're new to my channel, I'm so glad you found me. If you are a regular subscriber, thank you for being here. So first things first, I think I'll show you all which plants I plan to lift, repot, and overwinter, and they are herbs mostly, but I'll turn the camera around here so you can see some of the things that in the early days of October are still looking lovely. You've seen these zinnias many, many times before, but I just have to say how much I love this variety. This is called Alpenglow, and it's a floret seed variety. And mostly what's blooming right now here in the first few days of October are mostly these singles. However, earlier in the summer, the doubles were really, really strong. And you're going to see a few in here like this one. I have tagged or flagged 3 of my favorites, and I've not done anything to them. I'm trying to get them to dry out a little bit more because in just another week or so, I'm going to pull them and harvest the seeds for next year. So I'll have a stash. And my dahlias, I've had mixed reviews on my dahlias by myself this year. Dahlias are hard to grow in a hot and humid environment like we have, but once it starts to cool off, like right now, they start to put on some beautiful blooms. And so yeah, I'll be pulling these tubers and bringing you along. I also have a playlist on how to pull and divide and store your tubers if you live in a cold climate like me, where you cannot leave them in the ground because they will not survive our harsh winters. But right now they're looking beautiful. Okay, sorry I got distracted by the flowers, but they are absolutely stunning. Here's some pretty lantana still going strong. Okay, so over here is where we're going to start, and you can all probably recognize this plant right here. This is lavender. So I'm going to pull the lavender, and I'm also going to find, I'm not sure where I'm going to pull, but I've got lots of parsley growing in all these different beds. So I want to pull some of the parsley out and get it in the greenhouse. So you might be wondering why I've chosen to pull this lavender and some of my parsley. Well, these 4x8 beds, this is a 4x8, and I've got a couple more of those. We're going to actually replace them next spring with the Birdie's raised beds. So the big, tall, beautiful metal raised beds that my husband installed this past spring, we're going to do the same here. They're still going to be 4x8, and they're going to be the 15 inchers. And so I want to go ahead and get these out of here because we're going to be working in these 3 beds, and they need to be empty so that in the spring, when we're tearing them apart and reassembling and starting new beds, that we don't have perennials here in the way. So that's kind of my thinking on that. The other thing I wanted to mention is There are all kinds of herbs out there, and some are perennials and some are annuals. Things like lavender, things like my chives, they're perennials, meaning they will die back to the ground and they will reemerge year after year after year. And so I really want to protect this. This is a long lasting one. Parsley is not really a perennial, but I can overwinter parsley in my greenhouse. So I thought I better pull some parsley as well. So that's what we're going to be doing. Super simple project. I'm going to need a trowel, somewhere for me to put the plants, maybe my kneeling pad. And I did bring out a shovel because I have discovered actually that because I use drip irrigation, which I love, it only waters right by the plant. So if you get very far away from the plant, the soil is pretty darn dry. And in this bed the other day, I noticed it was pretty compacted. So I brought my shovel just in case I need some more power. So that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to lift these out and then we're going to go in the greenhouse and I'm going to show you how I pot them up and other ways if you don't have a greenhouse, how to overwinter some of your perennial herbs, but also some of your tender herbs. So I brought my potting up tray from the greenhouse. I brought it out because that's going to be the perfect place for me to set my plants that I'm going to be digging up today. All right, let's test this soil with my trowel and see. Oh yeah, hard, hard, hard. Okay, so let's use my little shovel here. That might be just what I'm going to need, yep, to get around the root ball. Okay. That could not have been easier. Dig, lift, put in the tray, good to go on the lavender. So now I need to turn my attention to parsley. And those of you that follow some of my shorts on YouTube might have noticed I've been out here seeing lots of swallowtail caterpillars on my parsley. That's a wonderful host plant for those beautiful butterflies. And I definitely don't want to dig out any of my parsley that has live caterpillars on them. So I'm going to turn the camera around. We're going to go around and look at some of the different parsley plants and make a good decision about lifting out at least a couple of those to bring inside the greenhouse. Of course, this was the bed I just pulled the lavender out of. So there it sits. And right next to it is a parsley plant. And at some point, I'm going to have to pull this or just let it go for the year. But I am not pulling this one because let me come in with my camera. I hope it's going to show. Do you see the beautiful, beautiful caterpillar right here? And so, yeah, we want to leave that caterpillar alone. Hopefully it can eat enough parsley to grow up and turn into a beautiful butterfly. So if we go over here to my zinnia bed with my celosia and some feverfew, I've got parsley here in the front and over there. And this had some caterpillars on it, oh gosh, about a week ago. And I am not seeing any active caterpillar on that one. So that one might come out. Let's take a look over here. I've got one tucked in here also. And I am not seeing any active caterpillars on this parsley plant. I do have some tucked in. They might be harder to get to, but here in my pepper bed that's still going strong, I really got to get out here and harvest. I like to freeze peppers. I use them all winter long. So I don't know if you all can tell, but you see that's the base of this really beautiful Italian parsley plant. So I've got, I don't know, oh, here's another one. So here's another one tucked in, but I think these are going to be a little bit harder for me to get to until I've harvested all of these peppers. So I think makes the most sense to go back to my zinnia bed here And I think I'm going to choose this parsley plant and that one to overwinter. All right, I'm just going to remove a little of this celosia. I've got loads of it, so I don't have to worry about it. They're going to go into the compost bin anyhow at the end of the season, which is very quickly upon us. All right, so here's my parsley plant. And I've got some drip there that I don't want to end up cutting, so let me move my drip out of the way. And hopefully this will be as easy as lifting the lavender. Well, because pulling the lavender and the parsley was like, the easiest thing ever, I have been thinking about what other things might I want to pull in overwinter, and I know for sure I want to hang on to this English ivy that are in these two planter boxes here in front of our garage. They make amazing trailers. So if you can see behind me, this is the English ivy I'm talking about. And there's an identical one over there. They make great spillers or trailers for containers. And so, yeah, let me turn the camera around and show you what I'm talking about. And they should be super easy to lift out of there and repot and store over winter for next year. So the two plants I grew in here for summer, of course, were the English ivy I've already shown you that I'm going to pull, and this begonia. This is the Surefire White begonia. It gets all kinds of raves online about it being this great plant, and lots of you love to grow it, and I would too if it didn't take it 2 months to put on any size. It stayed this big until about August, and I planted it in early May. So anyways, I'm not sure why. It's supposed to do great in sun or shade. I love the plant. I'll plant it next year, but I'm not going to plant it here because it just took too long to get on any kind of size. So, I don't know what I'm going to find when I dig in here, and I might end up disturbing it. It's an annual. It's going to go in the compost bin soon anyhow, so I'm not too concerned if I destroy it in my attempt to get out the ivy, because this is the one that is a perennial and will grow from year to year to year. So, all right, let's see what I discover as I get my hoary knife in here and start trying to release this ivy from the container. The soil is super nice and soft, as you would expect in a pot. But I am expecting, because this ivy is so enormous, I'm expecting it to have quite an extensive root system, but I don't know. We'll see. It's hard to know what's going on under the soil. Oh, yeah. It is really far down in there. Okay. So, I mean, look at that. Isn't that awesome? Talk about a spiller for a container. Yeah, I'm going to shake some of these off before I take it inside the greenhouse to repot it. Get rid of a few of the spent leaves so it'll be looking its best. So I'm just going to stick it in this bucket and I'm going to head over there and do the same thing to the other one. Okay, now that I've got my ivy, I will meet you all back inside the greenhouse. So I've made it back inside the greenhouse. So it is time to think about which pots I want to put these plants in and where exactly. So I'm going to turn the camera around and show you a close-up of what I dug up and where I'm thinking they're going to go in my greenhouse so that I can overwinter them and use them again and plant them back out next spring. Okay, here are the 3 plants I pulled out of the raised bed garden. Of course, my beautiful lavender and a couple of parsley plants. So where am I going to put them? I'm thinking I want to put this beautiful lavender plant in this terracotta pot. You know, I love to whitewash my terracotta pots, and the way that I do that, I just use some chalk paint diluted, and I love that look. And then I'm thinking on my Italian flat leaf parsley plants, they're going to go in this raised bed box. This box I've had in the greenhouse since I got the greenhouse, and this is where I like to put my culinary herbs because I love to cook and I come down here often and snip off of the rosemary, the sage. This happens to be oregano, and oregano, it's loving its life. So I may shift the sage to make way for the parsley. I'm not exactly sure, but you'll get to see me do that. And then down here we've got, of course, the 2 English ivy plants that I pulled out of my pots. And I'm thinking I'm going to try to fit them both in this tall antique terracotta pot. I picked that up at an antique shop a couple years ago, and it's nice and deep, so I think it can handle the roots. And so I think that's where that's going to go. So I just need to get after it. So I'll set up the camera here and I'll probably talk to you a little bit about perennial versus annual herbs and get to work. All right, time to get the parsley in my raised bed herb box. And so sort of as I'm doing this very simple transfer process, I do want to talk to you a little bit about herbs. You know, herbs, there are 2 kinds of herbs. There are perennial herbs that come back year after year after year, can handle cold winters, and there are annual herbs. This sage is a perennial herb where I live, and so that means it's going to come back year after year. So it can live out here in my greenhouse year round. Just FYI, everything I am transferring into pots or these boxes today, I am going to use Biotone root starter fertilizer in the hole because these plants are going to be in a little bit of shock. And so I want to help them get established in their new home, whether it's in this box or in a pot. Always, always use a root starter organic fertilizer like Biotone from Espoma. You've seen me use that a million times. It is my go-to to get plants established, either when they're brand new in the spring or when you're transferring and transplanting like I'm doing here. So anyhow, so it's important for you to know whether your certain herbs will come back year after year or they need to be replanted. Parsley, you know, it's really considered a tender perennial, meaning, you know, it's more like an annual, but mine seem to do really well in this raised bed box throughout the winter. I can keep these going pretty easily here in the greenhouse. Before I go any further, though, I really want to emphasize you do not need a greenhouse to be pulling your herbs or other kinds of perennials that you want to overwinter. If you have herbs in your garden and you want to pull those and you want to bring them in your house, absolutely do that. Pot them up, bring them in your house. They really need bright light. So if you have a south facing window or a really great bright kitchen window and you want to pot up some of your herbs to use through the fall, I would really encourage you to do that. You know, in a perfect world, your herbs inside your house would get about 6 hours of sunlight a day. Some of you have grow lights. They do beautifully under grow light. So, you know, don't think you have to have a greenhouse to be able to do this. You absolutely don't. So I'm going to encourage you all, if you've got some herbs in your garden right now, before your first frost hits and really can take them away, especially tender herbs like basil or parsley, do what I'm doing. Pull them out, pot them up, bring them in the house, and that way you can cut off them you know, for your cooking for the next several months. So that's my encouragement to everybody. All right. So again, I think I'm going to stick this one right there, that parsley plant. I'll put the other parsley plant in here and then we'll get that lavender planted up in a pot. Now it's time to pot up that beautiful lavender. And as I do that, I wanted to mention a few more things about herbs that you might or might not know. Herbs like crummy soil, actually, especially Mediterranean style herbs like lavender and rosemary and sage, things that do great in the Mediterranean. They like hot, dry soil with not a lot of amendments. But you did see me put some biotone in here, and I'm doing that. That's a root stimulator, root fertilizer, because they're going to be in shock for a while, and I'm just trying to help the roots get established. But generally speaking, you don't want to be fertilizing your herbs. So, you know, one less chore for us to do. Oh, I see a couple of little broken branches here on my lavender, so I'll just snap those off. Okay, yeah, could not be easier. So I need to add some soil, so I'm going to add some of the soil from here, some leftover, and then potting mix I've got behind me. If I need to add more, I'll do that. Next up is the English ivy, and I think I've decided to put it in this nice tall antique clay pot. So this doesn't have any soil in it. So I've got my potting soil here. So I'm going to go ahead and fill it up. Typically, English ivy as a plant, it likes semi-shade to shade. It does really well there. And, you know, with our shorter days and all throughout the winter, and I've grown it in my greenhouse many times, it does just fine. It doesn't get too much sun because, you know, it's winter time and the sun isn't that strong anyhow. So I'm not really sure. I'm just looking at it right now, and I don't think I'm going to be able to fit both of these in here, but I sure would like to if I could cram them in to just have one. They're pretty big. Let's see. Let me see if I can do that. It may or may not be very healthy for the plant. I'm just overwintering them, so I'm going to try it, but I can see I've got to take some soil out for sure, and then I'll be putting it back in. So I'm just going to dump it here on my table, and we'll put in some nice soil. So again, because it's transplanting, I am going to add some biotone to the soil to help those roots grab on and hopefully get over the shock of me ripping them out of their original containers. But that's got a pretty healthy root system, I would say. All right, so where's the front? So I'm going to try to position them like that. And I tried to shake off a lot of the spent leaves. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So let me backfill with fresh soil. Get some more. And again, I think I said it. I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but English ivy grows like crazy. It can be invasive. I would strongly recommend you never plant it in the ground, even though I know some people like to use it as ground cover. And if you can maintain it and keep it in check and keep it from taking over everything, I know a lot of people like to grow it on trellises. My preferred method, as you can plainly see, is to grow it in pots where you can contain it. And in fact, once I get this potted up and watered in, I'm going to need to think about maybe trimming this back. These two little ivy plants started out, I got them, I think, at one of the big box stores a couple years ago. They started out as these little scrawny, maybe 5 or 6 inch high plants. They are vigorous growers for sure. All right. So I feel really good about what I got accomplished this morning in my garden and in my greenhouse. And if you're like me and you garden where you do have frost, where you do have cold winters, early October is the time for you to really be mindful and thinking ahead. Learn when that first frost is coming so that you can, if you want, like I am, you can be pulling some kinds of plants out of your garden, bringing them in your house, in your garage, in your shed, or in your greenhouse to overwinter them so that you can keep them going and enjoy them throughout fall and winter, and maybe be able to replant those beautiful plants, herbs, flowers, etc. in the springtime. All that's left for me to do is to clean up my greenhouse. So I'm going to go grab the leaf blower and maybe my broom and sweep out some of the soil that I spilled. But until next time, I'm going to wish everybody out there happy gardening.